It's a wild world out there, but some worlds are even wilder. Hi, my name is Tyler Hapney, and you're listening to Dungeons and Dystopias. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome back to yet another episode of Dungeons and Dystopias. My name is Tyler Hapney and I am your game master and host. I have run hundreds of games of Cyberpunk Red and Dungeons and Dragons, and this podcast is a way for me to reconcile my thoughts on some of those systems. Today, we're going to be discussing the upcoming book coming out for the Forgotten Realms campaign setting. I believe it's called Heroes of the Forgotten Realm. And recently, I mean, when I say recently, I mean, this was like 9 months ago, they released a Unearthed Arcana that gave us a bunch of new subclasses, or reworked subclasses that we would be seeing in the new edition. Well, the new book is about 2 weeks away at this point, and we haven't really seen exactly what changes have been made, but we do have some ideas based off of some internet comments and things from people who have gotten early access to the compendium. So today, I'd like to go over those 8 subclasses that we can expect to see in this new book, and kind of discuss some of the things that have been changed, I guess, between the Unearthed Arcana and now. Big thanks, by the way, to a certain Redditor, Bitter Mixin, who's compiled all of these differences between the Unearthed Arcana and now, so we can at least sort of see where things have changed. And there's been quite a lot of changes, actually. So without further ado, let's get started. And we're going to start with College of the Moon, which is a new Bard subclass. I don't recall this being in the original 5e. Obviously, this is my first time, but this one seems to be inspired mostly by like fae tales and most specifically like druidism on the Moonshae Isles, which is an interesting place. I'm glad that they're actually covering the Moonshae Isles in the new Forgotten Realms book. It really seems like they're finally expanding out from the Sword Coast in this next edition, and I'm really excited for that because there's so much more to the Forgotten Realms than just the Sword Coast, which is what a lot of 5e was sort of focused on. So, what exactly does College of the Moon get? Well, they get something called Moon's Inspiration and Primal Lore at a level 3. Moon's Inspiration gives 2 benefits, Inspired Eclipse and Lunar Vitality. Inspired Eclipse allows you to become invisible and teleport up to 30 feet as part of the same bonus action. And then Lunar Vitality lets you expend a Bardic Inspiration when you restore HP with a spell, and then you can add the result to the hit points restored. So basically, these already are starting out as really, really, really good healers and mobile people. I mean, think about it. If you use a Bardic Inspiration to go invisible and teleport, then you can just teleport to someone and heal them with extra HP. You also boost the creature's speed by 10 feet when you use Lunar Vitality, so you also make your allies faster. Primal Lore is a fun one. This one allows you to learn the Druidic language and 1 cantrip from the Druid spell list. You can also change that cantrip whenever you gain a Bard level. Additionally, you get one of the following skills: Animal Handling, Insight, Medicine, Nature, Perception, or Survival. And you get, proficiency in that, which is crazy because you're already a bard, which means you have proficiency in 15 million different things. Level 6, Blessing of the Moonwells, or now called Blessing of Moonlight. You always have the Moonbeam spell prepared. It's not a bonus action to cast anymore as it was in the Unearthed Arcana, but while the spell is active, you now glow, shedding dim light out to 5 feet, and whenever a creature fails its saving throw, it gets the effects of this moonbeam. Another creature of your choice that you can see within 60 feet of you then regains 2d4 hit points. So once again, feeding into that sort of healer. It really seems like this Bard subclass is made almost specifically for healing more than anything else, which I think is really good. We don't exactly have a ton of Bard classes
already that are specific to healing. So this sort of like, I guess, hybrid between a druid and a bard is pretty cool. The last thing, the last subclass feature we got to talk about is Eventide Splendor. This gives two benefits: Shadow of the New Moon and Vibrance of the Full Moon. Shadow of the New Moon allows a creature you inspire with Inspired Eclipse will now also become invisible and teleport with you. And Vibrance of the Full Moon allows you to roll 1d6. In lieu of a Bardic Inspiration die, you're able to use 1d6 to heal, and it doesn't expend any Bardic Inspiration at all. So really, honestly, it's just an extra heal. You get this at level 14, and you heal 1d6. Personally, I don't think it's that great. I think the other one is a lot better, the one that allows you to make your allies invisible and let them teleport. I think that is really cool. Next up, they made changes to the knowledge domain for cleric, which I really liked knowledge domain old school because I don't know, I'm a big sucker for types of subclasses that are all about knowing things. Anyways, the first thing we get from knowledge domain is the blessings of knowledge. You gain proficiency with one type of artisan's tools of your choice, and two of the following skills of your choice: arcana, history, nature, or religion. And here's the kicker: you get expertise to the two skills that you choose, which is great. I don't really know of any other cleric subclass that gets expertise, which is, obviously stands out a little bit. Knowledge domain spells include things like command, comprehend languages, detect magic, detect thoughts, identify mind spike, dispel magic, non-detection, tongues, arcane eye, banishment, confusion, legend lore, scrying, and synaptic static. All of which are pretty decent. Level 3, we get access to something called mind magic. This one requires you have a divination spell from your knowledge domain spells table that you have prepared. And you can use your channel divinity then to cast that spell without expending a spell slot or needing material components. So as long as it's divination, you can basically cast that for a channel divinity rather than using any of your spell slots, which could really come in handy. Is the basic gist on that one. The next one is Unfettered Mind. You gain proficiency in intelligence saving throws, and if you already have that proficiency, you get a different one of which you can choose. You gain telepathy out to 60 feet. When you use this telepathy, you can also simultaneously contact a number of creatures equal to your wisdom modifier. I guess it would be your wisdom modifier. So, pretty cool. Kind of a sort of like a telepath sort of thing. I could see an illithid knowledge cleric being super cool to sort of have in your party. So anyways, we don't get anything else until level 17, which we get something called Divine Foreknowledge. And as a bonus action, you magically spend your mind to the possibilities of the future. For 1 hour, you have advantage on D20 tests. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Which, I mean, in general, advantage on D20 for an hour is insane. I mean, it's an in-game hour, so it's not like anything crazy, but like still, damn, that's advantage on all attacks, on all skill checks, everything for an hour. Now, once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. You can also restore your use of this feature by expending a level 6+ spell slot, which is crazy. So, if you're level 6+ spell, you just absorb that, and now, congratulations, you have an hour of advantage on D20 tests in game. That's crazy. So the next one we're going to talk about is technically Purple Dragon Knight. However, it has been changed to Banneret, which is unfortunate. I mean, I liked the Purple Dragon aesthetic from, the Forgotten Realms. I like that whole area of Cormyr and that sort of lore, but I get why they changed it. No one really played Purple Dragon Knight at all. At least not in my home games. I think a lot of people were put off by the very specific lore that goes into that fighting subclass. So anyways, what do we get? Well, the first thing we get is something called Knightly Envoy. You learn a language of your choice, which is pretty great. You get Comprehension, which lets you cast Comprehend languages as a ritual with Charisma as a spellcasting mod. Polyglot, which lets you learn a language from the Player Handbook or Chapter 2 of Heroes of Faerun, and also replace the language learned from this benefit with another that you've heard, seen, signed, or read in the past 24 hours, and well-spoken, which gives you proficiency in insight, intimidation, persuasion, or performance. So it's not just learning a language, it's a whole lot more than that. It seems like this is a fighter that is charisma-based, which, I mean, yeah, I could see that. That's pretty cool. Group recovery is the next thing we get, and when you use second wind, you can then now choose allies that are within 30 feet of you, equal up to your charisma modifiers, like 3 or 4 or 5 people, and then you can give them hit points not equal to your second wind ability, but 1d4 plus fighter level. It can be done once per short or long rest. So that's neat. That could be good for getting a lot of allies up if they fall down. The next one is Team Tactics. Team Tactics. Group recovery also gives allies advantage on a d20 test until the start of your next turn. So yeah, at level 7, not only are you able to heal all your allies essentially, but once they get back up, they're going to have advantage on d20 tests for their round. And that's going to be pretty great. That's like, that's a huge turnaround potentially on any fight. Rallying Surge is a sort of an action surge. Well, it's an enhancement to action surge, I guess I should say. You can choose up to a number of allies up to your charisma modifier with a 30-foot emanation originating from you. That's the exact word they use in the Unearthed Arcana, emanation. Each ally can then use a reaction to have a couple of options. And then it boils down to attack and move. You can make an attack with a weapon or an unarmed strike, or you can move up to half of your speed without provoking opportunity attacks. Pretty cool, pretty neato. Very good once again for getting your allies around. It really seems like this is more of honestly, it's crazy to say, but a support fighter than anything else. Next up, we have Shared Resilience. You basically, the way it's described here, it allows you to use a reaction to give an ally within 60 or so feet of you use of your Indomitable trait, which, if you didn't know that 2024 Indomitable is different from a regular 5e Indomitable, this one allows you to add your fighter level to your save when you fail something. So inherently better than just a reroll. It just allows you to increase that number by a static amount, and it's pretty good. The last thing with Banneret is the Inspiring Commander trait. And this one gives you 2 things. It gives you Bolstered Rally, makes the group recovery and Rallying Surge, rather than 30 feet, a 60 feet emanation, which is pretty great. And then lastly, we have Unshakable Bravery, gives you immunity to Charmed and Frightened, which at level 18 is like, okay, great, awesome. That it feels a little late for that to be a thing, but hey, at least we get to increase our, honestly, now that I think about it, this capstone's not that great. It's really not. I mean, I'm not personally excited for it. If I were playing a Banneret, I'd be more, pumped for like Rallying Surge than I would be for Inspiring Commander. And the last one we're going to cover today, because we don't have a ton of time, is Oath of the Noble Genies. And I like the fact that we have a Genies Paladin. Personally, I think that's really cool, because we don't have any Genie subclasses really right now. I mean, I think maybe we have a Warlock subclass. I could be wrong about that. But either way, making a Genie Paladin is such a cool aesthetic. I don't know. It just seems, kind of just tickles my brain here. So obviously, I mean, this is all about Kalimshan, in this specific area and all the genies that are around there. But let's get into this. Level 3, we get Elemental Smite, which allows you to expand on one use of your channel divinity, for a bunch of different things. For one, we can use Dow's Crush. You have, give the target the grappled condition and give them the restrained condition. With Genie's Escape, you are now able to change into this sort of semi-incorporeal form, is the exact wording apparently used. It gives you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, in addition to condition immunities from grappled, prone, and restrained. So basically, pretty cool. Not able to really be held down by anything for at least a little bit until the end of your next turn. Then we have a Freedy's Fury, which basically adds 2d4 extra damage to a random enemy. It jumps within 30 feet of you and hits someone else for 2d4 fire damage. So it's just a little extra spell, and I think it'd be interesting to see that on a crit, because then you'd have 44 fire damage, and could be interesting. And then the last one we have is Marid's Surge. The target and each creature of your choice at a 10-foot emanation originating from you makes a strength saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, the creature is then pushed 15 feet away from you and has the prone condition, so you can just knock people over, which is pretty cool. I mean, prone is pretty nice, gives you advantage on attacks, a whole lot of other things. The spells that GD Paladins get: Chromatic Orb, Elementalism, Thunderous Smite, Mirror Image, Phantasmal Force, Fly, Gaseous Form, Conjure Minor Elemental, Summon Elemental, Banishing Smite, and Contact Other Plane. All make sense for a Genie Paladin, in my opinion. I like the Elemental kind of summon sort of part of that. I think that's really cool. Really cool. Level 3, we get something called Genie's Splendor. Your base AC becomes 10 plus Dex plus Charisma. You have to be unarmored, but you can still use a shield. You also get skill proficiencies in one of the following skills of your choice: Acrobatics, Intimidation, Performance, or Persuasion. Level 7, you get something called Aura of Elemental Smiting. Choose one of the following damage types: acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage. You and your allies now have resistance to that damage while in the aura. At the start of each of your turns, you can change the damage type affected by this feature to one of the other listed options, with no action required. So I could be resistant to fire damage one turn, and the next turn I could be like, okay, well now it's cold damage. And, that can be really dynamic depending on what you're fighting, or sort of how many people you're fighting and what abilities they have. Level 15, we get Elemental Rebuke. When you're hit by an attack roll, you can take a reaction to have the attack's damage against yourself routed down and force the attacker to make a dexterity saving throw against your spell save DC. If they fail, they take 2d10 plus your charisma modifier. Damage is one of the following types: acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. You can choose. On a successful save, the attacker takes only half as much damage. And you can use this feature a number of times equal to your charisma modifier, which, if you're a paladin at level 15, should be a 5. And regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. And then finally, our amazing, wonderful capstone, Noble Scion. Use a bonus action, you gain the following benefits below for 10 minutes, or until you end them. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. The two things you get are Flight and Minor Wish. Ooh. So Flight, obviously, is what it says on the box. You have a fly speed of 60 feet and can hover. Minor Wish, when you are an ally in your aura of protection, fails a d20 test. You can instead use a reaction to make you or the ally succeed instead, which is crazy. So level 20, you can just be like, hey, actually, you succeed on that test, which could be good, but at the same time, still, it's a level 20 capstone. I feel like, I don't know, it's just hard to say. But we're going to roll right into our monster of the week here. We don't have a ton of time, but I would like to just say, because we just talked about them, genies. Let's talk a little bit about genies in D&D. So, what kind of genies are there in D&D? Well, there's a bunch of different types. There's Dao, Jin, Ifrit, Marids, Jan, Kyle, Korash, and task-specific genies. But basically, all you need to know is that each of them are essentially split up between the different elemental planes. For instance, Dao are from the elemental plane of earth, Jin are from the elemental plane of air, Ifrit from the plane of fire, and Marids from the elemental plane of water. They have, Traditionally, genies are kind of all over the place. Afridi and Dao and Marids all act differently, but I mean, we all know the bit. Genies grant wishes, and usually they're a little chaotic in the way they do that. But that's only in a few certain situations in D&D where they'll grant you a wish. I mean, if you find a bound genie, there's a good chance they might grant you something. But other than that, you know, if you're walking around the city of Brass, it's not like you're going to get wishes or anything just for running into an Afridi. And generally, if you do run into an Afridi, well, guess what? They'll probably try to enslave you or worse. So honestly, at the end of the day, genies are just very powerful, very chaotic sort of creatures that you could find within the Forgotten Realms. And if you're dealing with one, no matter what kind it is, it's very good idea to be extremely cautious with whatever approach you use. And if you do get a wish, you know, I'd be very careful with my wording. But yeah, genies. Fun stuff, fun stuff. That'll be it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I know we weren't able to get through all of the subclasses, but I did like talking about a few of them. And hey, you know, once the actual book comes out, I might be able to acquire a copy from a friend, and I can come back to you and tell you a bit more about some of these other subclasses. But that'll be it for us this week. Thank you so much for listening. My name has been Tyler Hapney, and this has been Dungeons and Dystopias. Please come back next week.